All right. Welcome back to the podcast. My name's Peter Bogdanov. I'm here with my good friend,
Dave Gabine.
and together we are Middle-Minded. Well, today we're getting into our first real episode. Last week we did our introductions, talked about what the podcast was going to be about, and today we're diving into a good topic. Our first one, we're going to get right to the point. We're talking about political hypocrisy, things that the right does, things that the left does, things that the middle does that contradict us getting along. And without further ado, we're going to start with a little off topic a little bit. We're going to talk about why we think the Democrat Party lost in 2024. And to begin, I'm going to see what Dave has to say about that.
All right. Well, let's see. I think one of the biggest reasons that the Democrats lost is because they didn't listen to the majority of the people. I think they chose identity politics over what was really the focus of a lot of people's on a lot of people's minds, and that was the economy. Now, whether you look at the numbers statistically, the economy wasn't bad. Inflation had come down significantly, and jobs were good, unemployment was good, but people weren't feeling it. And no matter how much a president like Biden stood up there and told you that the economy was good, if you went to the grocery store and you're spending a lot of money and you're like, where'd my paycheck go? That doesn't matter. The economy doesn't feel good to you. So, I think that was the biggest problem, and just, deciding to focus on just the identity, this culture war, these identity politics, really kind of hurt them. Now, that wasn't the main thing. I think the whole, pretending Joe Biden was all right for a long time, and when he really wasn't, and that's on Biden and his family and his aides.
You think you're unique in that? I don't hear a lot of what I consider left-leaning liberal Democrat voting public admit that, even though I think everybody moderate and to the right just knows it for a fact.
I mean, if you watch the debate and deny that he was not all cognitively there, then you definitely have issues. They call him the Trump derangement syndrome. You got Biden derangement syndrome if you watch that and thought that he was all there. And not only that, I mean, he rarely did interviews and press conferences. And
so, since we're talking about hypocrisy, and that's what I kind of want to focus on, do you feel that it's hypocritical for the left-wing media, which is a monopoly in the media, who goes really soft on Joe Biden, but I haven't heard an interview with Donald Trump be soft ever since he jumped into politics? Would you agree that you think, like, he was just on The View last week and they coddled him and they asked him easy questions and he was still showing his mental ill capacity, but nobody attacked him. Nobody ever asked him anything hard.
No, but I mean, you're going to a safe place. You don't see him on, Fox News doing that. You don't see him on Hannity or what. I don't know if Hannity's still on, but
you don't see him on
whatever.
Period.
No. So you're not going to get tough questions from your.
So is the Democratic
side.
Party cowardice? Trump goes on these. He doesn't care who asks him questions. He goes on the tough ones. He goes on the really tough ones.
Are they cowardice? I think with Joe Biden, yeah, for sure. Why wouldn't, I mean, I'm surprised. First of all, I'm surprised. Like everybody, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's a whole cover up." He was. I don't know if it was a full on cover up, because if so, why would you even go on the debate stage? Why would you even? You haven't been doing interviews. You hadn't, done
Because
a
they
lot of
kicked
press
up
briefings.
his.
Why go on it? Why even put yourself in that position? He didn't need to. He did not need. He
I
did not
believe
need
they
to
thought that he could use pharmaceutical companies to bolster his mental capacity for an hour and pass by taking whatever drug, juiced him up a little bit to get there. Because clearly, I mean, the guy couldn't even walk off stage without someone holding his hand.
Yeah, I think so. The physical and mental, two different things. I think you could be a president in a wheelchair and be cognitively there. I think at 80 whatever years old he is, if he had to, he's frail. That doesn't change it in my mind as much as if you're mentally there. Mentally there, you need you need somebody. You need somebody who's mentally there if they're making the decisions.
This is the toughest job in the world. Yeah. One of the things I like to see is when you see Obama go into office, who I voted for twice, and then you see him come out of office. You can see the physical torment of the most powerful political figure in the world, arguably, and the same thing on Biden. For that matter, I think you've seen it with Trump as well. I mean, you really see it with every president. I mean, look at Bill Clinton now. Like, just before and after, that job is so tasking that I think we would both agree. What are these senior citizens doing? And you can be 35 years old and be the president of the country, yet we never get anybody younger than 60, 65.
Yeah, is it 35? I don't know.
It's 35 years old. I'm pretty sure.
I don't think they're. To me, being 51, I don't really know if I want a 35-year-old running the country, but 40, 45 maybe. But yeah, there should be. It should be like, in the regular world where, okay, you're 65, it's time. Well, now it's 70, it's time to retire, but it was 65.
I think there's, I mean, it's like you 70, said, 45 is like, okay, you've lived long enough to actually have wisdom and knowledge. When you're 25, you think you know everything, you get really politically juiced, you're at all the protests, you're at the colleges, but I mean, you've only lived 10 years of your life in a consciousness of society. Before that, you were just a child playing games and doing whatever you were told. And by the time you're 35, you now understand what a decade of adulthood is. By the time you're 45, you start to realize that the roller coaster goes up and it also goes down. So you have the wisdom of losing time, whereas when you're younger, you don't. So I don't know. I mean, is it hypocritical for the Democrat Party to put Biden in such a weak state? We all knew he was in this state. Most people, I think, are willing to meet there. But Donald Trump's just as old. Now, is age a factor, or is mental capacity the factor that we should be?
I mean, mental capacity is definitely the baseline, but I think age, just, you look at, I mean, you just look at someone like Biden or Trump at their age, like, I don't see how they relate to somebody who's in their 20s and 30s, maybe 40s, maybe 50s, but it's just so removed. I mean, like, we're talking 50 years different from somebody who's in their early 20s, almost 60. It's just different generation, different time. Things change, and we gotta. I think we need young leaders. I think, look at this whole thing. I don't know if you keep up with the left at all as party, but I guess this guy David Hogg, who you might remember from the Parkland shooting, that's kind of where he got his name out there. He's been rising through the Democratic Party as far as just being an activist, and so he's the he's the, I don't know if he's a co-chair. I should know this, but I don't know if he's a co-chair or just a chair, vice chair rather, of the Democratic Party now. So he's put out a lot of statements saying that if they don't change leadership in the Democratic Party, like get rid of all the old people, Pelosi, Schumer, all that he's going to like push to primary them and put money into it and raise funds to primary these people. That's what, and the Republicans do that a lot. I mean, Trump just says, you don't vote with me, you'll be primary, and people, but
I think it takes that. Like at some point, young people, and I agree with you, in their 40s, 50s, by young people, because we're talking about presidents right now. We're not talking about society in general. We're talking about somebody capable of running the largest country in the world, or one of the largest countries in the world, and there's a certain age that you feel more comfortable with, and this is on both sides. I mean, I think this is something we can agree with. We it's something we can probably go into, is like term limits on Congress and the Senate, just like the president has, where Nancy Pelosi, Maxine, you go on the other side, Mitch McConnell. I mean, these people look, I'm gonna say it, they look prehistoric. They look like they're all missing teeth.
They're all pretty historic or prehistoric?
Pretty prehistoric. Let's use both. They don't look pretty. They look downright scary. And I think most people agree that let's get to some younger leadership who has some oomph behind them. And then I think it is important to have a pulse on the younger generation, as well as learning from and using wisdom of the older generation. And the older generation, Trump and Biden are both too damn old. Yeah. And I don't honestly think that Trump's showing signs of being too old. I think his mind is just fine, but I'm just trying to find that middle ground. I could agree.
You gotta define fine, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
What I was saying, though, I want to go back because I didn't finish my statement, was with this guy, David Hogg. They're trying to basically cancel him. They're trying to go back and have a recount of the votes and do a revote, trying to kick him out of the, this position of vice chair, because he's been vocal about wanting to change the, change leadership. So that's pretty hypocritical too. That's
par for the course for the Democrat Party.
Yeah, they need to do something.
Donald Trump was not a Republican. He couldn't get done what he needed to get done in the Democratic Party, so he became a Republican. Tulsi Gabbard got put on a terror watch list for opposing the Democratic Party. Kennedy, same difference. He knew he couldn't get his job done inside that party, which is, I think, why they call the Democrat Party the deep state, is if you're not with all these elderly people, from Biden to Maxine to Nancy Pelosi, then you get canceled. Or
they did the same thing with Bernie, even though he was, he's an independent, but he, again, not having that possibility of a third party ever being viable, he chose to run as a Democrat because that's who he caucuses with. But he, they pushed him out, when he was running.
So we're going to wrap up this segment and get into another part of this hypocrisy and political. But right now we were talking about why the left lost the 2024 election. I suppose I want to make sure that, middle-minded, we always like, how is the Republican Party doing the same thing? Is, I think one thing that we could talk about is the Republican Party is now using cancel culture, whereas the left kind of invented and abused, and I think that's why everybody's kind of sick of the left, the identity politics you talk about, and we wanted to change, is because it's not tolerant. It's something else. But I think it's kind of sad that the Republican Party, go to the Bud Light thing. Well, we learned cancel culture and we weren't afraid to use it. So, all right. So cancel culture in the terms of hypocrisy. When we I think moderate, right-leaning people would say that cancel culture came from liberals, left-wing, canceling and destroying anything that they didn't agree with. I think for a number of years, I would say there was no hypocrisy here. This was not a fighting mechanism of conservatives, religious people, moderates. They have a tendency to be more conservative in how they choose to debate and fight politically. However, I'm kind of in agreement with you now that after 2020, especially after the election with Trump and Biden, the right learned to use cancel culture. And as an example, probably the most famous one is Bud Light. When the right and conservative moderate side of the planet didn't like Bud Light using identity, I don't know how I would define that. We basically just shut Budweiser down and caused a massive amount of financial damage to Anheuser-Busch for doing something of that nature. So I would say that now we're both bigots. We're both hypocritical. What do you chime in on that?
Yeah, I don't get it. It's like people, number one, freedom of speech. First Amendment. You should be able to say what you want, your opinions, your views, without having a whole mess of people just attack you on your business's website, whether it's through Yelp or something like that, and give you a bunch of one-star reviews. Just sit there, make different accounts, and just flood your thing because you said something that they don't like. And that includes, even if you're a racist and you have these racist views, you're entitled to them. They may suck, but you're entitled to them. But at the same time, the people who are doing the canceling, they have the right to do what they're doing too. So I don't like it. I don't think it's right. But and it really makes it so you have to watch what you.
Yeah, it's so
makes
funny.
You watch it even closer because I think if you were going out there saying all this stuff that was whatever anti this race or that or anti whatever it is. You can be called out for it too. You have the freedom of speech, but they do too. So it's a real fine line. I know this has personally affected you, so
it's affected me hugely in a couple ways. I think you do, we have the freedom of speech, and I think in modern times with the internet being so connecting, because when the Constitution was written, when these concepts came out, if a guy in New York City said something, somebody in Alabama didn't react to it. And now with the internet, and it was the internet, it wasn't even phones. It's the connected smartphone and the internet. Where everybody across the world now can get outraged. So you have freedom of speech, but clearly the world no longer has freedom of consequence. So you can speak your mind, but there is consequence. Yeah. Cancel culture exists on both sides. I wish it would stop. I don't have an answer. What Dave was talking about, I do want to go into my business.
Because I think yours is a little bit, from what I've heard, you telling me, yours is a little bit different. It was something that you said taken out of context completely, and that's the issue. You can get something taken out of context, and that's horrible. I think if you were actually out there.
What about the Trump in Charlottesville? on one side that's been debunked. He did not say that neo-Nazis are good people. He said that the moderate Republicans that showed up to protest a tearing down of a historic statue were good people, because there's a lot of people there, but the left put it in a context that these 100 people or 50 people who were neo-Nazis and or white nationalists were who Trump was talking about, and he wasn't. So that's how that got framed. What Dave's talking about with me, I honestly I made a comment to somebody about body positive. My doctor had given me an obesity level 2 rating, told me that I needed to go on a diet and get my exercise up. And at that time I was already feeling, I wouldn't say embarrassed or ashamed of my body weight, but I'd been an athlete in my life. I'd look good during certain times of my life because of the way I went about athletics, and I no longer felt good about myself. And it didn't matter if somebody told me, hey, feel positive about your body. When my doctor told me I had obesity level 2, I was heading towards pre-diabetes. That didn't feel good, and I don't care about someone's emotions or their opinion that I should feel good about myself. With my wife and with how I use my sexual identity, I didn't feel good about myself. I made a comment about that in that context, and then a person went out and got mad at that, and then went 7 months back into my Facebook thread. They must have spent 2 days, like 12 hours trying to find this, because it was deep in my Facebook thread, and you had to find it in a conversation. And I do talk a lot online, and I have a lesbian, non-binary, fluid daughter who identifies as trans, and she has a very bad temper. She loses her cool. She says things like, I hate you and I hate everything about you, and then the next day she, without even apologizing, wants you to talk to her civilly. And so I made a comment in this thread about trans men turning to women and being in sports, hyper specifically Fallon Fox, the MMA fighter who broke 2 girls' jaws and didn't even disclose that she used to be a man, and then the pronoun debate at that point. And I had framed it in the context of, how would you like it if I spoke to you like this and then said 2 sentences? And the person took the 2 sentences without the context and then blasted it all over Facebook and the media. We had 80 1-star reviews on Yelp within hours. We had a ton of them on Facebook. I had to turn off commenting and turn off thing. Luckily, we were able to frame it as what it was. It was a hate crime. These people attacked me with no context. And good for me, I had a lot of people in the LGBT community that stood up for me and were like, are you kidding me? Peter has I've had a hermaphrodite as a tattoo artist. I've had several gay and lesbian artists work for me and with me, and so the community came to my support. I was able to back out of it, so to speak, but it was horrific. And I'm a small business. It almost destroyed me. It scared me to death. And the problem is it came out of fake. It came out of context.
Yeah.
And I think that's the scary part, is when politically you're talking about a president and you allow a media conglomerate, a monopoly, to continually frame things out of context. I find myself, you can't even talk to some of my liberal left-leaning friends because they're so convinced that this guy said he loves white supremacists.
Yeah. And speaking of that, because we were talking about this the other day, and you told me to go back and watch the whole
an interview,
video or whatever. It's a press briefing where he talks about it. So I did, and you were right. There was nothing in there where he said. I mean, he did condemn. It was
just the opposite. He condemned.
And I think that this is where Trump has his problems. He should just shut up once he's said something. He continues to go in, and I think in his mind maybe he's trying to defend his base, and maybe he's trying to not offend.
Maybe it's just terrifying when people call you Hitler all the time.
Sure.
I mean, I luckily don't get called that all the time.
I think that, like, after watching it, it was a reporter who asked him about something, and he did say, and he clearly said that there was a lot of people just protesting the taking down of a Confederate statue, which in my mind, good for him. I don't care. I don't think we need him up, but that's.
So we take down George Washington?
Who knows? Maybe.
Ben Franklin? Thomas Jefferson?
I don't think. Okay, so the difference. Okay, I'll say no and no, but I'll say yes to the Confederate general because you lost. The Confederacy lost. It's like, would we? Not that we have any.
So in history, we should erase all the losers. Do you know that the victor writes history? If the victor writes history and we erase all the losers, what history is? What did they win? Who did they win against?
But we don't have to erase it. But do we have to
put a statue up?
Do we have to memorialize it? Do we have to make it? And that's another
this particular person's entire life on this one subject? First of all, it was about slavery. It was a general in a military force going in a civil war. And so everything that Robert E. Lee ever did was horrific and horrible because at the context of the time in history, this was not immorally incorrect. So it's really convenient that us in 2025 can look back 200 years ago and critique someone morally when morally they were in a different place in time. Let's just talk about free sexuality. In 2025, internet porn has changed the entire face of the planet, and back then you had super Christian values. So I think there are statues that are up for this debate of whether they should be there. But I don't think they should be torn down. I think they should be moved to a Confederate history museum where they're not necessarily praising the.
I love it. I love that idea. I love that idea. I'm not opposed to the statue. I'm opposed to the way that. And again, you can't appease just a certain amount of people for everything. There's a lot of people who love that statue. You got to think, why do you love it? What is it about that statue that you love? Now, there's many people on the other side that discuss them because that is a symbol of repression and a symbol of the past in their history that they don't like. They're not going to forget it. It's written in the history, but they don't want to be reminded of it every time. Then I got to ask, what is it about that statue that makes the people on the other side who want it? What is it that makes them look at it and say, well, that's why I want that up there.
Let's change statues.
That's what,
something that makes me angry as all hell on principle is statues of George Floyd. A guy who put a gun to a pregnant lady, a guy who was in prison 9 times. The reason why it's such a big deal, him passing a $20 bill, is he was going back to prison again. And he had fentanyl on him, which my assumption is he swallowed a 300% overdose of fentanyl to not get busted with it, because with the passing of false money and the drug offense, he knew he was going back to prison. So you're not talking about someone who was changing their life. You're talking about a lifelong person with really bad choices. And he is a villain by any definition. He is a person who spent more of his time in bad moral behavior than he did in good moral behavior based on his prison record alone, let alone going into drugs and theft and what he did with a pregnant woman. And whatnot. Yet we have to have statues of him as some sort of superhero.
I don't know why. I'm not pro, George Floyd statues.
I'm pro, making sure that a marginalized group isn't abused, but making statues of a bad person is, I think, the same thing, the argument the left would say on Robert E. Lee and Confederate.
So perfect
The only
hypocrisy. Perfect hypocrisy.
The only difference is Robert E. Lee did a lot of things in his life that are very, very positive. And I'm not an historian on this. I'm just assuming that a general with his wealth and power, he did a lot of good as well. And the war wasn't only about slavery. It was about a states' right for choice. So it's easy to say that it was about slavery and racism, but that's taking it out of context. It was about the states having a right for Alabama or Tennessee or Arkansas to have their flavor, and to have New York and North Carolina.
Did you say flavor or slaves?
I said,
okay.
I said flavor.
I just wanted to know. Okay.
I said flavor. Well, I think it's time we jump into another topic. So let's do that. All right. So now we're going to talk about hypocrisy in politics with calling names, using derogatory language. Is the left, is the right hypocritical? Are they both the same monster? Are they a little different? I'm going to start by saying the last time I voted Democrat was in 2016. I voted for Hillary Clinton. I did not feel good about that vote. I was just a lifelong Democrat, and that's who I was supposed to vote for. I did want a woman president. I did have some respect for Hillary, but she started to scare the hell out of me, and I think for the reasons we all kind of know with that story, bleaching laptops and go against the Clintons, you end up dead. I think 50-something people mysteriously suicided. I don't know all the truth behind that. Point is, I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I knew in the back of my heart that Donald Trump was going to win. I actually, from a business standpoint, from even a Hollywood standpoint with The Apprentice, had some admiration for him. He was given money by his father, but he went out and made an empire out of it. I inherited some money from my dad, and I made my career out of it. I didn't inherit that kind of money. You drop a few zeros. But I didn't dislike Donald Trump. I respected him as a business owner. I'd watched his career a little bit, but I didn't vote Republican, so I didn't vote for Trump. And what caused me to be left by the left is I don't think I moved, but I woke up and everybody was calling Donald Trump Hitler. Everybody was calling his cabinet Nazi and Third Reich. And then within 2 weeks, 3 weeks of that election, you had everybody calling citizens Nazis and Third Reich and Klansmen. And then all of a sudden, we got this whole thing of white guilt and white oppression and colonization. And all of a sudden, it became really hip and cool to be a left-leaning liberal Democrat and call people the most foul language that you can call someone in modern times. And that's when I guess the term is left the left, but I think the left left me because I just wasn't going to tolerate. So I went out to my friends on Facebook and in person, and I was like, what are you doing? Why? Because I have a Russian family. I'm of Russian descent, and we're actually the army that defeated Hitler and bring him back and got him in his bunker, and they lost, I believe, 20 million people. Russians, army lost. So when you started calling my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts and uncles, and even my other side of my family, my grandmother and mother, and you started calling them Nazis and Third Reich, I mean, you couldn't say something more offensive. And all I did was go out and say, hey, stop doing that. And what happened? I got called a Klansman. I got called a Trumpster. I got called a Trumpster when I didn't even vote for Trump. And I do not think this is where these two parties, Democrat, Republican, left, right, are equal. I want to argue that the hypocrisy is all left-facing. The things that people will say, and drop it in the comments if you feel so enlightened, is, well, you say libtard. Well, libtard is calling someone stupid, right? Like it's dummy, and you learn to call somebody dummy in preschool. You probably learn it in daycare. This is a elementary level insult, dummy or stupid, versus Hitler, Nazi, Klansman, which I do not know a word in the English language that is worse than that in modern times. I wouldn't even say the N-word is as bad as calling someone Hitler. like an individual person being condemned racially versus being condemned as the worst killer of a genocide and atrocity to the entire world and trying to evaporate a race,
Yeah.
they're not the same.
No, it's pretty. You know what I always said, and you know, so I have family that voted Republican. I had family that voted for Trump. I think both my parents did. I know the first time anyway. Um, and they're not racist. They're not Nazis. Um, and so I was always one of the people saying, yeah, you can't just say everyone who voted for Trump is a racist or a Nazi. You can't.
Can you say most people?
No, I don't think so. But I actually
think you
would
can
say,
some people.
I would say, but maybe I used to say, and I don't say this anymore, but I used to say, you know, not everyone who voted for Trump was a racist, but every racist voted for Trump, which may be the case, but
that's poetic. I like that.
I mean, it's still, but again, it's still generalizing, Pete, and I don't know, you know. So I've stopped saying that, but
because that's to say that nobody on the left believes in black superiority when we have things like the NBA is 75% black, and that's because they're superior athletes based on the color of their skin. That's black superiority. It's the exact same thing as somebody saying that, or let's take China. Let's get off black and white. If you have a billion people in China with Chinese and they don't have this mixed race like mentality in China, well, guess what that is? That's Chinese supremacy. They want to marry Chinese people, have Chinese babies with other Chinese people, and they have a preference.
A lot of the world does that, though. A lot of the world.
How the races came to be.
A lot of the world does that. And me speaking from, I have a multiracial family. I love it. Multicultural, you know, but I do know a lot of people, you know, who, whether they're Middle Eastern from a certain country or not, want them to only marry the same, you know, the same country. But and so, you know, that's another whole topic. But getting back to the, you know, not all racists or whatever, not everyone who voted for Trump is a racist, but every racist voted for Trump. I don't even believe that, because I believe there's a ton of Democrats that are probably racist who, you know, didn't vote for Trump. So that's why I stopped saying that. But it was just more
I like
generalization.
It, though. I mean, I think it's a great line. I would have accepted that line a whole lot more than my grandmother and grandfathers on both sides, especially the Russian side are Nazis, when we're actually the culture that put Hitler in his place. The bombs on Japan had nothing to do with Hitler. He was already done. So it was just crazy. And then I thought it would dissipate, especially after Trump lost in 2020. But he was, you know, definitely going to run again, and we all knew it. So they just kept it going all the way until it's still going.
This is what I think. Why I think Trump doesn't do enough, and maybe he can't do enough. Maybe he can't. Maybe people are just going to always call him that. They're going to bring up what his, you know, the stuff with his apartment buildings and his dad's stuff, not letting black applicants, or like putting a note on the black applicants to make sure that they don't get into their properties, and you know, or calling the
well, since we're talking about hypocrisy, let's stop on that point.
Okay.
This is something I don't know that too many people disagree with. I think some business real estate people would say, well, you don't make a luxury residence and put it in Compton. You put that luxury residence on the beach or in Beverly Hills or whatever. And I don't know that I'm arguing that. I'm just saying that that's a good argument that I've heard. Now, let's go to the other side of the fence.
In real estate, there have been laws preventing that, because it happened a lot. It was called redlining. I was in real estate. I know about it. And it definitely happened. It definitely tried to keep, you know, certain racial or ethnic groups in certain areas, and there's a whole thing about white flight.
I'm not arguing that. That's why I was like, I don't know that it's my argument. I've just heard that argument. We have this thing of guilt on Trump and the towers and redlining black people. So now Trump is a racist. I would say that he was a business person who did something on the fringes that he probably shouldn't do. I won't say probably, he shouldn't do. But does that define the entirety of his life? And the reason I'm going to go, because we're talking about hypocrisy, you have Joe Biden who said you're not black if you don't vote for me. You have Joe Biden who didn't vote for civil rights back in the 70s, 60s, and as quoted in a very famous quote, I do not want my children growing up in a racial jungle.
Absolutely.
So, and what is worse? I would say what Biden said is 20 times worse than a business owner protecting an investment, wrongly protecting an investment, but there's common sense to why it is there. And there's no common sense to saying, I don't want my white children growing up in a racial jungle, referring to black people as monkeys in a jungle. That was to be the only reason you would use that terminology. So why does the left forgive Joe Biden for being a absolute racist, and then to forgive him and let him say something like, you're not black if you don't vote for me?
I agree. I agree 100%.
Crap.
I mean, that's I mean, I was just going to say that, yeah, you could, people change. Whether Trump's changed or not, I don't know. But hey, maybe
sitting in the White House with 60 black leaders around him as he wrote the most financially lucrative piece of legislation for black people in the United States. That's not a change.
Does he have any black people around him now? I don't know.
He's always, The Apprentice had black people all just on TV. Before you hated this guy, you loved this guy. Before you hated Tulsi Gabbard,
that's the thing.
They loved Tulsi. Before you hated Kennedy, you loved Kennedy.
I didn't.
Maybe loves the
I didn't
strong
know
word.
much about Kennedy. I did like Tulsi. I liked her when she was running as a Democrat. I liked her stance on getting rid of endless wars, for sure. I haven't liked Trump for a long time, and I think it's just his smugness. It's just him as a person is just off-putting.
It's kind of funny that
even back in the '80s when I saw, I remember being a kid and seeing the lifestyles of rich and famous, watching him and going,
"Isn't that fucking dickhead? Isn't that the reason the left likes everybody?" I mean, let's just face it. I've been liberal my whole life. I'm tattooed from head to toe. You would never see me and say Republican or even moderate maybe. You would just naturally assume, based on your intelligence and the view of my identity, that I probably lean liberal. Yet in liberal, you have the personalities with the most obnoxious identities that are what would be the right word? I want to say vibrato, but that's not the right word. This energy that you complain about Trump is all over left-sided media and Democratic politics, and especially when you go into the talk hosts, the Whoopi Goldbergs of the world, when you go into people like LeBron James, and I mean, they're so arrogant and they're so full of themselves.
Never
and
really
you got no. Well, good. We can agree. Middle mind. I don't like LeBron. Anybody who calls himself a slave that's worth $1 billion is doing more harm to Black Americans than anything you could possibly do. And at the same time, he's not building his house in Black neighborhoods in Cleveland.
He's not doing what Jason Tatum's doing from the Celtics.
Yeah,
he's donating his whole money from his shoe deal to help Boston youth.
Yeah.
In
and there's the hypocrisy. Is like the lack of. There is a good example.
That's where I'm from.
I think on Trump, most people agree that, but I think most people would agree we didn't expect him to control himself, and I could give a crap about mean tweets. If you're worried about mean tweets, you probably shouldn't hang out with me. Don't, like tattooing in a tattoo studio, all we do is cap on each other left and right. Someone goes, ow, and you're like, you little bitch.
I'm not worried about mean tweets. I'm worried about tweets that are just moronic and make him look just like an unstately leader, more so than I am. I'm more worried about him taking this $400 million Air Force One that Qatar is trying to give him, and not necessarily for the whole bribery and anything that could possibly be associated with the emoluments clause with the Constitution of just taking that gift, but more so like that thing's probably got bugs in it. Who knows? It may be rigged that he goes up and they can take control over it and I don't know, fly it into a trade center. Maybe I don't know. They don't have a good track record.
The sad thing
is
every hardcore leftist just is like, yeah, that would be great. They would fly Trump into a tower, fly it into a Trump tower.
Fly it into a tower and kill Trump and 3,000 other people. And I mean, that's the thing. That's where I find a lot of hypocrisy on the left, actually. And I'll come out and say this is that the whole wishing death and stuff on somebody
that was sickening.
For that reason, it's just could you imagine the what would have happened if Trump did get killed in that assassination attempt? It would have been horrible.
I think it would have been a day I could compare it to 9/11 and its significance in this country. It might have started a civil war. It might have ignited the right who, I think this is the struggle for the right, and I don't consider myself, I'm definitely not far right. I'm just, go back to being a musician. I do rap music, and tattooing. And then if you see any of my paintings, you just know that that's not the way I lean. It's just the way people have pushed me when I stood up against the left. And, oh fuck.
Now you're called a right.
Well, now I'm a Trumpster. I've lost probably 30, 40 of our mutual friends, musicians, simply because I said don't call people Nazis, and then of course I became a Klansman, and they wanted to call me any name in the book, to the point it doesn't even mean anything anymore. I'm like, if you call me a racist, I almost want to congratulate you and say thank you. I appreciate the trophy, and it's not because I am a racist. It's because you are an idiot and you're stupid and you have no argument, and you just proved yourself to be insignificant in conversation. So now I just get to ignore you and tell you that I'm not even going to talk to you. So, and
for all the multicultural stages we've been on, whether it's just playing music, we had a Thai bassist for a while. Leroy, obviously.
I was going to say, who's my co-MC? That's the front man of the band.
That's the most obviously. But, we had Oscar played bass for a while.
Oscar's actually one of the people who left my friendship over politics. Here I'm singing all races, colors, and sounds. My people come together from all around. And the bass player who's playing that bass line got caught up in politics in 2016. And by 17, 18, he defriended me and called me a Klansman. And simply, again, what was I guilty of? I was simply guilty of saying, do not call my family and Republican voters Nazis and Klansmen. Yeah. And that's really all I had to do to live the fate.
I think you can't just that in itself is, that's the definition of stereotyping. You're going to stereotype a whole group because they voted for somebody.
I think the tragedy here is we use words like brainwashed and drinking the Kool-Aid, and I think this is a little bit of hypocrisy in here, because when you use those words, you anger people, and when you anger people, they never even hear your point. And for that, I wish the right would use would stay right focused and stay conservative and stay traditional. And when a traditional parent teaches their children, they teach them manners. They teach things like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say something. And this is more traditional leaning values. And if we would stick to those values, maybe we could have helped our friends on the left. Instead of saying Kool-Aid and brainwashed, you can just, remove those words and go, hey, is there a chance that the people who are speaking to you are using out of context propaganda to get you angry? For example, let's go back to the Charlottesville and all good people on both sides. Is there a chance that they kept throwing at you 1,000 times that Trump is Hitler and now you just believe Trump is Hitler? Can you slow down, and can you please show me the 8 million death certificates of people that Trump killed or the Republican Party killed or the American voters killed? I mean, where are the people that I locked up in a concentration camp simply because I voted for Trump in 2020 and 2024? And then the thing is you can't show the receipts because it didn't happen. And I now, if you're scaling out, again, we talked about the left calling Nazis being called libtards. This is not the same. You call someone Nazi, it's the absolute worst thing you could call someone.
The next closest thing, and it's not quite there, is the whole right using you're a pedo, you're a pedophile, you're on the left. The left is a bunch of just pedophiles, this cabal that that wants to eat babies or whatever that bullshit is. But you're a liberal, you must be a pedophile. Yeah. I've heard that, and that's
I've heard that.
Different.
I mean, I definitely know I don't know if we pick on Joe Biden because I have a hard time, and none of these videos have been debunked. I've never heard any, and correct me if I'm wrong, but him sniffing all these little girls, him grabbing side boob on a 12-year-old, there's like 15, 20 videos of this guy doing this inappropriate behavior right on a political stage. And so then we call, Joe the pedophile and other names. I think when you put, Jennifer on a Super Bowl where she's doing a strip tease at a family sporting event, I think, one, I would say, why are you doing that? Doesn't a family of traditional conservative people deserve to go to the Super Bowl and not have a stripper pole that comes from an adult establishment with a woman spreading her legs on a pole in front of all of us? Don't we have a right in society to have some common decency? Sam Smith dressing up, doing what he does. The same year they tried to cancel, what's the song? Baby, It's Cold Outside. WAP is the #1 song in the nation. So you have this left that wants to sing WAP, it was a catchy song, and for what it's like, she's one of my favorite hosts when she hosts the show because she's absolutely hilarious. But is she a pedo? Is she a sex cult member? With all that fake everything on her, I would argue that it's over the top. And I think that's what traditional or moderate people are afraid of. They're not, homophobia, they're not afraid of any one person. They're afraid of a cultural shift into indecency and a lack of an ability to control it, so that we slide. And this is where I go into blue cities. Like, well, where do you see the degradation of society? It's in liberal cities where there's homelessness in masses, there's fentanyl overdoses, crack and heroin overdoses, and these are the places where they make these songs and these movies and this culture. And so I don't think it's homophobia, transphobia. I agree that it gets said, but I think it comes from a place of care and concern, not hate and fear. I mean, the fear is, I'm concerned that society's slipping after internet pornography happened and after NWA happened, and we could say F the police, and then we could say, hey, I want some I don't know if I can say the word. And then all of a sudden this cultural shift happened where let's vulgar out each other. Let's just keep going.
Yeah, I agree that it's gotten, I listen to some of the things, and I have a little kid, so I listen to some of the stuff that, they're listening to, and it's not like that, but,
I hope not.
but no, but, I was remembering way long ago about 20 years ago, I dated a girl and she had a kid, and I remember the little kid singing that Soldier Boy, crank that Soldier Boy, whatever, which was a reference to masturbating, right? So, or jack it off somehow, and that skeet, 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 and all that other, right? And I'm like, these kids don't even know what they're saying, but they're saying this stuff. It's catchy, it's singy, and I'm gonna sound like my parents, but no, I'm being a musician myself too. You should be able to express whatever you want, but to make that the kind of the mainstream and
and then to force it on everybody that's my question. That's what I really want to hear from you is I agree that the right will say things like pedo and like I said with Biden and attack this smelling little girl's hair or whatever. I guess the thing that I don't have an answer for, and I want you to educate me. I legitimately want to know, like, where does it show up without it being concern? Because I think we should be concerned when we allow stripper poles in the Super Bowl. Like, that just was so out of place, because I have a right to watch the Super Bowl with my 4-year-old child, and I don't want to explain why her legs are spread apart.
I get it. I don't remember what I don't remember what Super Bowl was that. Oh, Jennifer Lopez.
They were promoting Hustlers, where you have a group of strippers who were basically date raping men and then robbing them. So they'd get them back to their hotel, put drugs in their drink, and then they'd steal their credit cards. And then, of course, they'd blackmail them because they were married men. So this was the movie Hustlers, and that's why they did this halftime show with a stripper pole. This was, years ago, but that's my point is I don't believe it's hypocrisy for the right to call the left a sexual cult or pedophiles, because I believe it's coming from an authentic place where we share society. And if you're truly tolerant and sharing society, well, then you have to let people with more moderate conservative cultures have their place in society too. And you can do F the Police as a music album, or you can do WAP as a song, but shouldn't we keep it like it used to be? In the liquor store, behind a curtain, where not every person who wanted to avoid it had to see it.
Yeah, I don't know how that got like into mainstream radio, and that's the norm now. But yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for you, Pete, because like you said, there's a place for stripper poles in a strip club.
There's a place,
and it's great, and I don't think those places should go away. I think that it. But
my wife hates it, but one of my favorite songs is I'm in love with the stripper. And I'm not in love with a stripper, but I like domineering, confident, sexually active women. Like that personality is enticing. Now, that doesn't mean I'm in love with a stripper. So I'm right there with you. And in my past, I owned a pornography company. In the 90s, we did websites, even produced a pornography film, and we did a website it was called Tasty Pleasures, that had escorts, as we called them, ads, and those escorts were straight, gay, and trans. I come from a very sexual, freedom-oriented political view, but I also come from a view that it's gone too far.
Yeah, and to your point, I 22 years ago, before I moved out here, my girlfriend was a dancer. When I moved to LA, I had a friend. She was a dancer. She would get booked and go to private places.
Can we see pictures?
Sure. And I was I was her driver. So I did security for her. When they dancing at the house, I had to scoop up all the money, put the thing, drive them. So I'm not opposed to any of that porn, but having a child now, like I do look and say, not that I again don't think there's anything wrong with it, but the access and the availability. I mean, hell, I wish I had it when I was a kid, but not a kid, but teenager,
Do you
whatever.
remember how hard it was?
Oh man,
Like
Sears
I remember,
catalog. That's how.
yeah,
I remember.
JCPenney Sears catalog, looking at the underwear section, and then it was funny because you'd look at the teen girls, and then you'd look at the like 20, 30, then you'd look at the more mature ones. And right, this was so G-rated. You never got that. I was.
But yeah, it's but it is a real. It's going to be important later on in life for me, to figure out how to, stop that and how to monitor that. But I think that comes down to a lot of, parenting, and you just gotta be
and now you have to be a more thorough parent than ever before. And that goes into my thought that doesn't a child have a right to be in society without coming across this blatant sexual or criminal or gangster content? Our children have a right to be in society just like old people have a right to be in society, and not everybody's 25 and sexually charged, but those.
And they have a right to just be kids. Let them be kids. They're going to grow up fast enough anyway, right? And then they're going to just let them enjoy the kid stuff. That's it's.
So wrap up. Today? Let's just think about what we talked about. Like, we're trying to find middle ground. That this is what this is about. Dave leans a little bit more left, definitely Democrat, liberal. I have been left by the left, I like to say, or I left the left, and I definitely am traditional and more middle of the road. I did vote Republican for a couple elections now, but of today, when we're trying to find the hypocrisy on both sides, sum up where you feel you've accomplished that.
Yeah, I didn't even talk about a lot of stuff that I wanted to, but it's just we don't have that much time. But I think that we got to stop with the whataboutism. Stop with the they did it, so I'm going to do it, or that hey, they did this, but we did this, or we can't do this, or whatever, and holding both parties to what they should be held accountable for, and don't just pick, because my party did it, it's okay. And when your party does it, no, then it's wrong. So I think if we could all get out of that mentality and see things for what it really is, it's that even though that's my guy doing it, that's wrong, man. I don't like that.
I'd like to see more of that where, and I try to meet you there too, because when Trump does something that I feel strongly about, I try to agree and be like, I don't like that. I think he has listened a little bit. I think he's much more tame this cycle than he was in the previous 8-10 years. But I would really like to see people jump across their party line, hold their party accountable for the crap that they say and accuse and do. I would have really loved an America wherein Democratic voters told their politicians and their media to not call everybody who voted in the other party a threat to democracy, or a Nazi, or a white supremacist, or a homophobe. And it was kind of funny for me because I tattoo some transgender people. I do nipple reconstruction, so male nipples on a female turn male, and then the opposite. And I know Republican transgenders and Republican gay men and lesbian women, and so you just sit literally just pissed all over your own people when you stereotype like that. And I think we would have been a beautiful America if the left could have stood up against the left. And I think the left wants to see that out of the right as well. if I'm speaking for the right a little bit, I don't know anybody who stands up for neo-Nazism or white supremacy. Now,
Possibly Stephen Miller. And that's my other thing I was going to say is Trump's his own worst enemy when it comes to those things, is because he surrounds himself with people who have, these past ties to saying things that are totally white national statements, and he needs to, in my opinion, just disassociate from that, and then. But I don't know if it's too late, But
I don't know if it's possible, because he literally, I've heard, it has denounced white supremacy and Nazism more than any politician in history, because he's been asked every single press conference.
He's had to. But that's the thing. It's like, why do we have to ask him whether he denounces it? Because.
Well, then, what do you just want him to get on the microphone and say it every time before someone asks?
No, I wish he didn't have to say it at all.
He shouldn't, because he should be dealing with running the country and running the country. Yeah. We are, and I'm going to end on this note, and I think you will agree to the statement. I don't know anybody who disagrees with this statement. The United States of America is the most socially, sexually, financially, and every other word you could think of, diverse country in the entire world and in entire human history. So how can we be the absolute pinnacle of diversity in history and still be here in this time where we're all being accused of Nazism, or we're being accused of being pedophiles and a sex cult, and we're like this sensationalism of headline topics and everybody wanting clickbait on their Instagram feed or whatever it is, has led to us forgetting we are the most sexually, financially, and socially diverse country to ever exist in world history, period, bar none. Nobody's even come close.
I
agree. On that note, I'm Pete Bogdanov, my friend Dave. Yeah. We are middle-minded. Thank you, sir. Until next time.